I didn't plan this moment. Not like this. Not with this kind of certainty. There was a time when her city was just a name on a map, a place I had never walked, never breathed, never felt. Just streets, buildings, noise, ordinary to the world. But to me, it slowly became something else, something alive. Because somewhere inside that city, she exists. Today, I'm not just saying where she lives. Today, I'm revealing the place that unknowingly raised the woman who changed my future. Every road there has carried her footsteps. Every sunrise has touched her face before I ever knew her name. That city saw her laugh before I could hear it. It held her dreams before I could protect them. And maybe without realizing it, that city was preparing her for me, and preparing me for her. So this isn't just about geography. This is about destiny finding an address. Today, I am revealing her city, the place that is no longer just hers. It's the beginning of our story. I used to think cities were just places, noise, lights, people rushing past each other without looking up, just coordinates, just names written on signs. But then your city became different to me, even before I ever saw it, even before I understood why it kept returning to my thoughts like an echo I couldn't explain. It wasn't calling me loudly, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, patient, like it knew something I didn't know yet. Somewhere inside that city, you were living your ordinary days, walking roads that meant nothing to the world, waiting at crossings, looking at skies I had never seen, breathing air that never reached me. And yet, without realizing it, I was already connected to those moments. While I was somewhere else, living a completely different life, time was moving us forward at the same speed, guiding us through separate stories that were slowly, carefully bending toward each other. I imagine the mornings there, not because they are special to anyone else, but because they were yours. The sunlight touching buildings before it ever touched my life. The sounds of that place shaping your thoughts, your laughter, your silence. That city watched you grow into who you are. It saw the versions of you I will never meet. The younger you who didn't know I existed. The days when you were strong without needing anyone. The nights when you carried your own worries. All of that happened there. In streets I have never walked, yet somehow feel like they already belong to part of my story. It's strange to care about a place you've never been, to feel protective over roads and corners and skylines simply because they held someone precious long before you arrived. Your city gave you space to become yourself. It didn't rush you. It didn't explain anything. It just let you live. And in doing that, it unknowingly shaped the person I would one day call my future. There's something humbling about that. Knowing that while I was busy becoming who I am, another place was doing the same work with you. We were being prepared in parallel, without instructions, without introductions, without even knowing there was a destination ahead of us. Just time doing what time does, moving quietly, aligning things we couldn't see. When I think about your city now, I don't think about buildings or crowds. I think about moments, the ones no one recorded. The second you pause to think about your dreams, the walks you took when you needed clarity, the laughter you shared that faded into the air but never really disappeared. All of those pieces are still there, scattered across that place like fragments of a story I am only beginning to understand. One day I will walk there, not as a stranger, but as someone searching for traces of you. Not the present you I know, but the paths that carried you toward me. I'll see a street and wonder if you ever walked there without realizing it mattered. I'll look at the horizon and think about how many times you looked at the same view, never knowing someone far away would one day treasure it simply because you once stood there. Your city is not just where you're from. It's where time invested in us before we ever met. It's where distance did its quiet work, where fate, if it exists at all, chose patience instead of speed. Nothing about it tried to impress me, yet everything about it feels meaningful now. As if the ordinary life you lived there was never ordinary at all. As if every unnoticed day was another small step that brought your world closer to mine, without either of us hearing the sound of it happening. And I wonder how many times our lives almost crossed without us knowing. How many flights passed overhead? How many maps could have connected us sooner? How many chances existed that we never saw because we weren't meant to see them yet? There's a mystery in that. Something both simple and impossibly complex. The idea that two lives can move independently for so long, while still heading toward the same point, like parallel lines slowly learning how to meet. And now, when I say the name of your city, it doesn't sound like a location anymore. It sounds like a beginning that started long before I arrived. A place that was holding your laughter, your strength, your quiet moments, keeping them safe until the day I would finally understand why that place mattered, why it had to exist exactly as it is, why you had to be there before you could ever be here, why the world allowed us to remain strangers for so long while everything was still moving, still aligning, still becoming something neither of us could yet see, something that was already taking shape in the background of our separate lives. Why? Hiding without urgency, without announcement, without asking permission, just waiting for the moment when distance would stop being distance. And your city would no longer feel far away to me, but instead feel like a chapter I had somehow been missing all along, and was only now beginning to read, slowly, carefully, realizing with every thought that it was never just your city, never just a place on a map, never just somewhere you happen to live, but somewhere that was quietly preparing a future I am still trying to understand, still trying to step into, still trying to grasp as it unfolds one unnoticed moment at a time while I stand here speaking about it, knowing that even now there are streets there continuing their ordinary rhythm, unaware that they are part of something much larger, something still moving, still becoming, still leading us forward into what comes next, without ever fully explaining how it all began, or where exactly it is meant to end, or if it is meant to end at all because some stories don't arrive with conclusions. They just keep walking, the way you once walked through that city, the way I will one day walk there too, following something I cannot fully name yet still feel with absolute certainty as it keeps drawing me closer, step by step, thought by thought, toward you and toward the place that knew you long before I ever could, and that continues even now to exist as the quiet beginning of everything we are about to become, while I keep speaking, still realizing, still discovering, still standing at the edge of a story that feels like it has already been in motion for years and is only now allowing me to notice it, only now allowing me to say it out loud, only now allowing me to understand that the distance between us was never empty space, but a path being formed in silence, a path that started there, in your city, long before I ever thought to look for it, and that is still unfolding even as I try to describe it, still stretching forward, still unfinished, still waiting just beyond the next moment I have yet to see. Distance is a strange thing. People think it separates. They think it creates absence, silence, disconnection. They measure it in miles, in hours, in borders drawn on maps. But distance never really meant separation to me. It meant there was a path, long, invisible, and patient, stretching between two lives that hadn't met yet. Before I knew you, I thought distance was empty space, just the gap between where I stood and where everything else was happening. I didn't realize that somewhere, far beyond what I could see, you were living your days at the exact same time. While I was learning lessons I didn't understand, you were learning yours. While I was facing moments that shaped me, you were facing moments shaping you. Two completely different worlds moving forward together without ever touching, like two stories written in separate books but following the same timeline. There's something powerful about that kind of distance. It forces growth without influence. It allows two people to become who they are meant to be, without trying to adjust for each other too soon. We didn't rush into each other's lives unprepared. We weren't handed shortcuts. We were given time. Time to struggle, time to change, time to understand things alone so that one day we wouldn't have to. I think about all the ordinary days that stood between us, days that felt meaningless back then, days filled with routines, responsibilities, small victories, quiet disappointments. None of those days announced that they were leading somewhere. None of them said, "This matters because it's taking you closer to her." But now I see that every single one of them did. Every delay, every wrong turn, every unexpected pause. They weren't obstacles, they were alignment. If we had met earlier, we would have been different people. Maybe we would have missed each other entirely without realizing it. Maybe we wouldn't have recognized what we had. Distance gave us the time to become recognizable to one another, even before we ever spoke. It allowed life to shape our values in parallel, to teach us patience in ways only waiting can teach. And waiting is not passive. Waiting is movement you cannot see. It's growth happening beneath the surface, like roots forming before anything appears above the ground. For years, we were growing in directions we didn't understand, Yet somehow those directions were leading us toward the same point. People fear distance because they think it weakens connection. But distance tested ours before it even existed. It asked questions long before we had answers. It demanded faith without explanation. It proved that what is meant to arrive does not depend on convenience. It depends on timing that refuses to be rushed. There were nights when I felt like life was standing still, when nothing seemed to change, when the future looked like an unanswered question. I didn't know that, at that exact moment, somewhere under a different sky, you might have been feeling the same thing. Two separate silences happening at once. Unaware they were part of the same conversation time was slowly writing. Distance gave us perspective. It allowed us to understand ourselves without leaning on each other too soon. It made sure that, when our paths finally cross, we won't arrive incomplete, expecting the other to fill what we never built. Instead, we arrive carrying full stories, ready to place them side by side, not on top of one another. And now when I look back, I don't see years of being far from you. I see years of being guided toward you. Every mile was not something between us, but something leading to you. Eve, Rye's stretch of unknown, was not emptiness, but preparation. Distance was never the opposite of destiny. It was the method. It slowed things down so they could last. It kept us apart so we could grow strong enough to stand together. It made sure our meeting would not be accidental, not careless, not temporary. It made it intentional, even before we understood the intention. So I don't resent the time we spent far from each other. I respect it, because that distance carried your life forward. It carried mine too. And somewhere along the way, without noise, without urgency, without either of us noticing the exact moment it happened, that distance stopped being a gap and became a bridge we were already walking across, step by unseen step, long before we realized we were moving toward the same place, long before we understood that what felt like waiting was actually becoming, what felt like separation was actually direction, and what felt like silence was quietly guiding two separate hearts closer with every passing day, shaping a meeting that was never rushed, never forced, only allowed to arrive when we were finally ready to see it, ready to accept it, ready to understand that the space between us had never been empty at all but full of unseen movement carrying us forward the entire time.